welcome back to Arrakis. We're just season
Mm-hmm.
20. Well, I shouldn't even say the season number. Episode 3.
No.
just in case. The
Yeah,
current
just to be
the current
safe.
season, episode 3.
I didn't. I'm disappointed in myself because I didn't have time to go do a costume change.
Oh, that's right. Well, the next part of this episode, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, we're here to talk about the second part of the first Dune book. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
only just now joining us, you should really go listen to the other episodes. Usually I'd be like, here's where we're gonna catch up. Baha baha. No,
Yeah, let's have a catch up on the 4 hours of content we produced. So five
right
hours
at like
of.
at a minimum here. So we are the majority of the way through the first Dune book. We didn't stop at the end of part 1. We stopped at the end of the movie part 1, where that lines up with the book.
Mm-hmm.
If you have hit the line, God created Arrakis to train the faithful, that's where you stopped last time, and that's where we pick up this time.
It's a great line as well.
It's very good. So last time we talked about the first movie that came out in 2021, and how that kind of aligned to the book and where we thought it excelled or kind of let us down a little bit here, and
Mm-hmm.
the comparisons between the two. And now we're going to pick up the second half of the book. Second half. Second third,
Second
probably.
slice.
Yeah, second little bit here. And then after that, we'll be talking about the soon-to-be released, almost 3-hour second Dune movie. But we'll get to there when we get there. We have the rest of this first book to read and hopefully enjoy here. That I am really interested to read because I think in reading the first part of this book for the first episode, like with most of these things that are really popular, sort of didn't realize how much I had picked up through osmosis.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to see, now that we've gotten through a lot of the big stuff, the introduction to Arrakis, the attack, the
Yeah,
sandworms,
the things.
meeting the Fremen.
Yeah, the things that you probably picked up through osmosis is
Right,
everything that we've covered so far. Now
right,
the question is, what didn't you pick up through osmosis,
right. Like
or what
what's
have you picked up that you don't know about?
right, like what's left in this book that that could be of osmosis interest. I think the thing that I am really interested in for the rest of this book that we didn't really touch on in the movie because it largely got cut out is a lot of the political machinations. That's a lot more in depth in the book. Like, how much do we get into one of the cruxes of the first movie in the book is the Atreides are doing really well, and the Emperor is really pissed about it, and he's very jealous
Mhm.
about it. How much are we getting into that relationship and the Emperor, who really hasn't been seen that I remember in the first part of the book? How much are we getting into that in the rest of the book?
Probably the only part to do with the Emperor that you've seen from the first section that we've read would be the discussions of Irulan.
Right, her journals and like the news and history books and stuff like that. The stuff that
Mhm.
also probably for the better was cut out from the movie, as that probably would have been pretty inelegant. But I'm curious to see how much of that is there, because the political stuff is always kind of simmering a little bit in this
Mhm.
book, and how much of that, now that we're really into it, now that Paul has a new name, how much are we focusing on
Mhm.
some of the galactic politics?
So that's the ironic thing is I think so. Minor spoiler that I'm pretty sure I made you aware of already is that there's just a time skip in the book at this
Oh,
point,
right.
um, where there is period that passes, we'll say,
Mm-hmm.
that is kind of influential.
Sure.
It's very interesting part of where it goes is in not telling you about a specific time frame.
Oh, okay. So
Um,
it's not like 15 years later. It's like, hey, man, time passed. You'll catch up.
it tells you a specific number.
Mm-hmm.
It's an important part where it just ignores a bunch of stuff.
Mm.
It's 2 years in the book. It's 2 years.
Okay.
It skips 2 years, but that's 2 years of integrating into a society. That's two
Right.
years of learning
Training.
culture and ways.
Right. Interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
very curious how the movie is going to approach this side of things too. Like,
right.
where are they going to fall on that line? And like you said, like you haven't really heard from the Emperor. We know he's going to be involved somewhere in
Mm-hmm.
this. Um, you don't know exactly how he's involved. We know Princess Irulan is important because
Right.
she narrates the start of basically every chapter, and she always has book names like Arrakis Awakening is one of my favorite ones,
Right. right.
which is spoken of like a historical text
Mm-hmm.
in the way she talks about it. So it's very interesting to see where all of that fits together.
Right. Yeah, and I'm interested to see how Arrakis as a character continues to kind of unfold. Because up until this point in the book, it's been a lot of the planet is the enemy. It is unyielding. It is unwelcoming. It will be the thing that kills you, and it's just what Arrakis does. But as Paul gets more
Mhm.
integrated into the Fremen society as the surprisingly large number of people that have learned to coexist with this planet, does the
Mhm.
attitude towards Arrakis kind of change overall?
Yeah. So, what do you think of his? What do you think is going? Do you think any of his predictions are going to come true? Do you think he's just going to be a planetary leader? Is he just going to lead the Fremen? Is it going to be a
Mm,
rebellion? Are they going to get put down? Like, where do you think the story goes?
I it's interesting because I think the book definitely is setting up Paul as some sort of leader. I don't know the scale of that, but my hope would be that as Paul continues to see the myriad branching possibilities that are ahead of him, and as he kind of
Hmm.
ingests all of that, how much does he try and fight some of the inevitability versus choosing his own path based on all of these branches? Like I think that's more of what I would want to see, other than, because it seems more like a story that can potentially be focused on your fate doesn't have to be written in stone. We have all of these options. We can
The
make our
path,
own path.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
the path chosen versus the path predicted kind of situation.
exactly. So that would be the thing that I think I would want to see more of, and maybe see him continue to, as he gets to be in more of a leadership position, or as he gets a handle on his skills and dealing with the Fremen and stuff, how you kind of address that that conflict between the two paths.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and
Do you think we see any familiar faces? Like the Atreides
mm,
family just got wrecked.
yeah, like
Like,
so many people died or seemed to
we
have
literally just took
died.
out like half of the cast, like
Yeah,
in
like
this one moment.
majority of the people, like Kyne's gotten eaten by the planet. Um,
Hmm.
he's probably
Duncan
not
got killed by Sardaukar.
right. Everybody else in Arrakeen seemed to have died. Um,
Hmm.
it's largely
Do you remember the Gurney and the Fremen conversation? Oh no, not the Gurney, the Thufia Hawat conversation with the Fremen, where they're trying to solve they're both speaking about similar things but in different terminology.
Oh
Where
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember that about like that was actually a
so we
pretty good
know,
scene. I forgot about that.
yeah, is this a water matter? If it's a water matter, why didn't you say so?
That's right.
What does that mean?
Right. Yeah, interesting. I don't because at the end it was really Paul and Jessica being pulled along by the Fremen to go to their destination.
CH Tabur.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember anybody that wasn't dead, and I'm drawing a blank.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not sure if anybody does come back. I will be pretty surprised, and I will be tucking in for a good story around the fire of like, hey man, how are you still alive? What's going on?
So I will say there is one person who is still alive, but not in the way that you
Okay.
know them.
Okay.
However, you won't hear about that until we potentially do Dune season 2,
Oh,
which
okay.
covers Dune Messiah.
Gotcha.
Then you
You
will
get
find
into
out
it.
about a certain thing.
I guess there is one character. I guess Raban is probably going
Beast
to be,
Ravan.
yeah, some sort of focus because at the end, Baron Harkonnen was like, "Hey man, don't kill them, but just squeeze. Not
Squeeze.
hard enough to kill. You got to get that money, man. You got to get that spice cash. Like get out there and start squeezing." So
Uh-huh.
I'm assuming
Uh,
he'll be part of that.
don't forget, we also have Fade Rautha in the wings, the young,
Mm,
energetic person that the Baron was specifically trying to teach how to become the new
sure.
leader of House Harkonnen.
I mean, I guess you have the Baron Harkonnen too in whichever state he turns out to be in after the poison attack. Um,
Uh-huh.
in the book, he is in a worse state than I think the movie portrayed him in. Um, so okay, so we got a couple antagonists at
Couple
least.
of threads to tie up, we'll say.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I'm mostly just excited to finish it and see
Mhm.
where the rest of this is gonna go.
Yeah. So my favorite part about this section of the book, and it's something which we haven't mentioned, but it's pretty much explicitly stated in how the last section ended, is now we jump into the Fremen world.
Right,
Now it's not great houses. Now it's not this versus this. Now it's the Fremen world.
right.
It's the Fremen land. It's the land of extremely talented fighters, but also a little bit of mysticism and science and
Hmm.
everything else all rolled up into one people. And
Right,
now we jump into that side of things, and now you learn about that faction specifically.
right. That's interesting and exciting. Yeah. All right. Well, any final thoughts here before we dive back into the book?
I'm curious how this goes with you, because this is
Yeah.
going to be a fast section. Like
Yeah, we don't
we
have
can
too
just
much
admit that.
left in this.
No, it's going to be small.
Yeah.
I I'm looking forward to it because
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that people jump to conclusions out about the end of this book. This is why Dune Messiah is like 300 pages long. It's a tiny novel in
Hmm.
comparison. Is because Frank Herbert kind of rushed it out as be like, no, you're wrong. Don't
Right.
take this interpretation from Dune. It should be this one.
Right. Here's what I meant. Go read this.
Yes.
Right.
But Dune Messiah is a very quick read too. It's about the same length as what we have left, essentially.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Right.
and I think a lot of people jump to the wrong conclusions about
Mm.
the end of the book.
Okay.
But that's obviously my personal opinion. That is what I view and what I see when I'm reading the books myself.
Right.
I'm looking forward to seeing what your interpretation of it is.
Right. All right. Well, on that note, let's go dive into the book.
Yep.
Hello, we're back. Back from the pages
Yes.
of Arrakis. We have finished the first Dune novel, all three books of the first novel. We have seen
Yes.
the ending.
My chair dropped at some point. I lost my height on my chair,
Okay.
so I was like, "Why am I so low?" That's why.
That's right. You're sinking into the sands of Arrakis in search
Mm-hmm.
for spice. Milan.
Yes. I already spoiled it for you, so you might as well reveal the T-shirt for this recording to the folks. Is my appropriate Muad'Dib Long Live the Fighters T-shirt,
That's right.
which is
The
really sick.
It's very good. Man, I want to summarize my thoughts here before we go in. That the back third of this book has some of the highest highs and some of the most confusing lows. So
Yep.
know that going in is that
Very appropriate.
this book has a lot. I liked a lot of this. Do you want to kind of lead us here chapter by chapter?
Oh,
As the Dune, I have a list up here if you want me to go through.
So my memory is a little bit wibbly. So remind me, we start with the burial ceremony, right? We didn't cover that in the last time.
No, because it starts with them recovering the water from Jamis, and the kind of
I was a friend of Jamis scene.
Yeah, and the kind of confusing back and forth. It's interesting the duality here with Paul before and after the time skip. Is before everyone's saying like I'm a friend of Jamis, and all of them like looking at him being like ahem, were you a friend? And he's sort of like, no, I killed him. No, like what are we talking about? And
he
then
even gets like the chat from Jessica where it's like, you do what they do, whatever they do, you do it.
It's like, dude, stand up and say the word. Come on, man. And then after that, they're kind of redistributing his belongings,
possessions,
and his water tokens.
Yes. So I genuinely do like this scene because I think it gives much needed depth to a character that could have meant nothing. And like Stilgar, who's the leader, explains when him and Jamis had a rough moment and they came together. There's the old dude who's like, yeah, I ran out of water at the siege of this location, and Jamis shared his water. And if you know it, if you've learned anything so far, you know that's
a huge deal.
That is holy thing to them.
Well, and it sets up something that happens here in the next minute too. But I like that. Go ahead.
Like the building out of Jamis is not just the angry person. Like Stilgar says, he's an angry person, but he does what's best for his tribe. He does what he thinks is best for his people.
Even his wife said he was kind of an angry dude.
Yeah, but he was nice at the same time. Like he did have his moments of goodness. And like I love, like you said, the confusion here where like Jessica steps up and gives and we'll talk about this later, but the holy legend BS description as to why she was a friend of Jamis. I feel like Paul's one is genuinely honest. Like he's like, yeah, like this. Jamis taught him the ways of the desert, and this is thrown back to the recent movie. This confused everybody why Jamis was a friend in the visions.
Yes.
And I think it's a really nice throw forwards to this, where potentially he could have been alive and he could have been that kind of friend.
Right.
Instead, he's this kind of friend where he taught him hard truths about the situation that he's in.
Right.
And the fact that he takes the balisette is a great touch.
Yeah. And then there's the further confusion of, like, here's how much water Stilgar had, and here are all the tokens for how much he has, so you can kind of dole out water as you need. You're the dude who killed him. Here are all the tokens. What are you going to do with them? And he's like, well, of course I'm going to give them to Chani to hold them. And everyone's like, gasp.
Yeah.
Romance?
Yeah, because she's like, look, I'll teach you how to like put them in like a necklace so that they don't rattle. And it's like, I can't remember if it's this part of the book or the first part of the book, but when someone points out that the Fremen are perfectionists,
I wrote
is
that down. Jessica says that in this chapter, where she says the Fremen are perfectionists.
in everything. Like they
Right.
have a method of counting water that they manually measure, and it turns out to be perfectly correct.
Right.
Um, and they have a way of carrying that on little tokens that they have figured out a way to wrap and bundle in such a way that it makes zero noise while
Right.
they're doing weird sandwalking stuff.
Right.
Like it's
It,
it's
my note
impressive.
my note that I wrote was uh like Jessica saying that they're perfectionists is kind of the most obvious thing when they have to be to survive on Arrakis, especially with as many people as there are, and as things we kind of discover about the Fremen going
As
forward.
lofty as their goal is as
Right.
well.
Right, like the things that they're doing to meet their needs, and then, like you said, as lofty as their goal is, they have to be perfectionists. They're capturing moisture from nearly everything to survive. Like that stuff has to be perfect, or everybody is dead.
Yeah,
Um,
and then taking excess and putting it in little holding basins
right,
so that they can slowly but surely change Arrakis. They
right,
can make Arrakis a paradise.
right. There's an interesting part here in this chapter where Paul cries, kind of like over
Yes.
everything and James's death and everything, and the Fremen treat this as like
They
the greatest gift that you're giving moisture
y-
to the dead.
use moisture to the dead, yeah.
Right,
It's a
which I
good
think
line too.
I like that a lot because I think that's a scene that could really be cheesy if you don't lean
Hmm.
into it in the right way, and I feel like he did a good job of, like, of course their water is and moisture is so sacrosanct to them that, like, crying is something unnecessary. Like, why would you waste your body's water like that? That's unnecessary. So the sheer act of doing it is powerful, and it feels like one of those things that is like not a Bene Gesserit thing for once. It's just Paul being
Yes.
Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's already given his names at this point as well, correct?
yeah,
Like he
yep,
got them at the end of the first
yeah. He
part of the
got
book that we read.
Muad'Dib at the end, and he's starting to call himself, and it cements as the book goes forth, Paul Muad'Dib. So he's not just calling
Hmm.
himself one or the other. There's a hyphen in between there. Um, they wrapping up this chapter. They go through and they
Deposit the water at like a
yeah,
holding site that they
yeah, like
have.
a secret holding site that is gathering water and kind of holding and keeping the water safe. And this is where they're talking about, like, Arrakis doesn't have to be like this. We're saving all of this water. We're going through all of this moisture collection stuff so that we can transform this planet into something better, where we don't have to
Hmm.
wear these suits. We don't have to live in the desert. We don't have to do all this stuff. This can
And
be
like
the paradise it was supposed to be before we discovered the spice.
yeah, and like that's what Stilgar explains too, is like, yeah, like we bribe the reason why there are no satellites, the reason why there are no ships that fly over the atmosphere of Arrakis is because the Fremen bribe the guild. Like
Right.
they have a direct relationship with the guild, and
Hmm.
they bribe the guild with untold amount of spice so that they
Right.
stop it from happening, because they've already started this progress in the south where nobody ever goes. They're
Yeah.
slowly but surely transitioning the ground to be more green by like
Hmm.
building plants. They're following Kynes's vision too. They're
Right.
following that slow, and still got even like references like, I am not going to see this, my
Right.
kids aren't going to see this, maybe my great grandkids might see this, but
Right.
the slow change is the safe change. So we're doing it
Right.
this way because it's slow and it's safe and it brings the least harm among me and my people.
Hmm. Paul finishes this chapter by being concerned about the growing inevitability of the jihad in his name. That
Hmm.
Jessica seems to share, that all of this seems to be building into something and not something good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next chapter here, we get introduced to the Count and Lady Fenring, who is
Mhm.
on Getty Prime for Fade Routha. Is that how you pronounce that again?
Fade Routha,
Fade Routha.
yes.
His 17th birthday, where he's gonna go. Is he gonna go kill a dude for the Lady Fenring? And she's like, ew, gross. No, what? Gross.
Yes. He, he's going into gladiatorial combat to celebrate his 17th birthday and basically his acceptance of being the heir to the Harkonnen
Right.
like throne,
And it's
essentially.
also his 100th slave he's going to kill in
Mhm.
like gladiatorial combat. Um, I I really like Fenring as a character. I really like this when it's him and the Lady Fenring talking to the Baron Harkonnen and Fade Routha. He's stumbling over his words. He like can't get to the point. He like can't figure out what he wants to say. And then when he goes in the cone of silence with Baron Harkonnen, he's like, "Look, dummy, what are you doing?"
He's Kaiser Soze. He's 100% Kaiser
100%. Like
Soze.
he drops it, and he's just like, "Dude, what are you doing out here? Like you've messed up Arrakis,
Uh-huh.
you've messed up this planet. You're asking
Why
way too
do
many
you
questions about the prison planet."
the Salusa Secundus, yes.
Yeah,
And I like the fact that that's kind of a throwaway thing here that we comes back to after the big time jump. And I like the fact that he throws down as well, like, dude, you have Thufir Hawat working for you.
right,
Why? You told us he was dead.
right. And you haven't killed him. Like, what are you using for? And like Baron Harkonnen is like, we're like poisoning him all the time, and every couple of days.
No. They already poisoned him. They're giving him the cure
Yeah,
all of
like
the time.
every couple of days, we just put the antidote in his food, and he lives. But like more than 5 days, oh, that dude's totally biting it. So you know, he needs to stay with us. And even Fenring is sort of like, that's messed up, bro. Like, what are you doing, man? This is
He's a man who knows too much, is how
right,
Fenring describes him.
and he's laying it out very clearly, so even the Baron Harkonnen can figure it out, saying, "You're messing up too much, and you're asking too many questions about the prison planet. If you keep doing this, the Emperor isn't going to let you choose an heir." And Baron Harkonnen is upset because he's like, "Well, no, he promised me that Fade Routha is going to be my heir," and he's basically like, "We'll see. What are you going to do?"
Like this whole, I do like the fact that this whole scene, this whole sequence, essentially shows that the Emperor's not toothless. Like this is where we really start to hear and feel how threatening the Emperor is,
right?
Because you get whispers of him in the first part of the book. This is a direct associate of the Emperor coming in and throwing threats at the big bad guy.
Yeah,
who we know so far,
and Harkonnen
making
is
him
scared.
look like a wuss kind of thing. Like it's a really good, like, I think this is a good hype train for the Emperor and what he's capable of. And I like the fact that the Baron's internal monologue goes from, are they going to send 2 legions of Sardaukar here and wipe out Gedi Prime? To, oh, please make a threat in front of me. Like, accuse me of something you can't prove in front of the Landsrod. I'll be Emperor before I'm done.
Exactly. There's this whole part where Fade Routha is fighting a gladiator that's an Atreides soldier that
has not been drugged.
Yeah, isn't drugged up like normal, and Fade Routha has put poison on both of his swords, which is like not the thing you're supposed to do.
It's the opposite. He's got poison on his white blade, not his black blade, I think, or vice versa.
Yeah, whatever the opposite is supposed to be. So he's trying to mess with the guy. He puts up a pretty good fight, and it's essentially like Fade Routha and Thufir have come up with a plan saying, well, I have to beat someone who seems like he's not a pushover. That way I am going to be a perfect candidate to be the heir for the Harkonnens, because who would deny me after this?
Plus, on top of that, which something we learn later, is they can blame it on the slave master, who is a Baron Harkonnen person, and the second in command is already in Fade's pocket. So Fade then gets his person to be the commander of the slaves.
Right. He's like starting to wool gather and kind of set all this stuff up. He eventually kills the guy by saying the magic word scum, and then kind of locking
Yes.
his muscles for a little bit, which
I like the fight.
comes
Like,
back
it is a
later.
very close fight.
Hmm.
And I do love the fact that this is just a no-name Atreides soldier, and
Yep.
he almost kills Fade Routher,
Yep.
which again tells you how powerful the Atreides soldiers were going to be or were, because this guy takes a barb in the arm and turns it into a shield.
Right.
He's painted the Atreides like logo in red in blood on
Right.
his
His leg or whatever.
outfit,
Yeah.
because that's who he is.
Right.
Like, I like that this is like, oh hey, by the way, the Atreides were no easy pushovers. Like,
Right.
this is what you have defeated. I hope you're ready for more.
Yeah. And Fade Routha um gains a lot of favor with the audience because he says, "Oh well, we'll bury the Atreides soldier with honor. I dedicate this win, the 100th win, to my father, the Baron Harkonnen, that sort of stuff." Um,
Uncle, but okay,
Uncle, sorry, yeah,
it's
um,
okay. There's a lot of
it's
relationships in this
yeah.
section.
The everybody kind of sees through it that matters, which is fine, but Lady Fenring is then shown to be a Bene Gesserit who's going to seduce Fade Routha and then have his
Mhm.
baby in secret, but kind of like shuffle it off world to then try and
Yes,
do their
to
whole like
preserve the bloodlines, we'll
right
say.
in case anything happens. Wink.
Mhm.
Um, so that's
I
the
like the
end of
fact that the Fenrings also see through the fact that like they know that it was a ploy that the slave wasn't drugged. Like, they
right,
click the fact that Fade knew that he wouldn't be drugged as well.
right. Next chapter here, the Fremen return back to the Siege,
Siege.
and learn that
Yeah, they make it to Tabor.
Tabor. Thank you. They learn that Liet Kynes is dead, and Chani is Liet Kynes'
There
daughter.
we go.
What in the
There's the
world?
reveal.
What in the what?
Now,
Very
now do you
very
see
cool
why I
change to
like?
the movie.
Yes. What now? You see
Uh-huh.
why that is so important to me in the
Yep,
movie, because I think that is a good change.
that's a super cool change, man. Yeah. Um, this is the part. So like Chani goes off and is upset for understandable reasons. Stilgar says like, "Hey man, congratulations, you have a wife and 2 kids now. You need to figure out what to do with them."
So
And
I like and hate this. Obviously, we can talk about the overt nature of the sexism
yeah.
rampant throughout this entire book.
Oh yeah.
But I like the fact that, like, it's not 100% you have a wife. It's like you have the choice. Like, if you
Yeah.
accept each other, you can become a couple. If not, then she is bound to you for at least a year,
Hmm.
and you are responsible for these people because you
Yeah.
have
You have to
taken
take
away their
care of them.
quote unquote breadwinner. So
Right.
because you've taken away their breadwinner, you are responsible for his wife and his 2 kids,
Right.
regardless.
And then after a year, you all can figure out what needs to go on, but like you need to be responsible for a year. He accepts her as his servant and sort of like, look, I'm not going to throw you out on the street. Like
There's a lot of playful, like, Hera is really good at being like
mhm.
disbelieving of who he is, refers to him as child,
Right. Like
does
this
all of this
dude
kind of
killed my
stuff.
husband. Like what the? Are you sure you
Then,
got the
like,
right one?
when she starts getting like the stories about what happened, and Stilgar's like, "Oh hey, I'm the best here. Does anyone want to challenge me?" And
Hmm.
everyone's silent. He's like, "Guess what? I ain't challenging him because
That's
I'll
right.
get done."
This dude's for real. Like I'm not messing with this at all.
And like her
Um.
being playful, like playfully flirty as they go through the rest of this siege, and she's like explaining what everything does. Like, here is the lesson room. Yes, we're leaving
Right.
tonight to go to a different like siege further south
Right.
because we don't want the Harkonnens to find us.
Right.
Well, here is the kids doing lessons. Here they are repairing equipment that needs to be disassembled by tonight.
Right. Here's
Here
the stuff
is
we're
a
still
bunch of other
making.
stuff.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
The dew catchers. What are dew catchers? And we
Yes.
learn about dew catchers. I love a good dew catcher
Hmm.
concept. Like, it's a really good description.
Yeah. I like a lot of this stuff here, just showing kind of there are more Fremen than you think, and they are way more sophisticated than people really expected. And there's a lot here of him going back to the place he's living, wondering where Chani is. The two boys come in with the crysknives, like looking to jump him. The chapter
No,
ends with him
no,
saying like the
they
children
come
fight
in
as ferociously as adults.
yeah, and they explain that they're not wearing the morning color of green because they have already accepted him as their new guardian, kind of thing.
Right.
I was like, okay,
Yeah.
strange kids, but okay.
Yeah. And then I like here at the beginning of the next chapter, which is from Jessica's perspective. She is talking to the Fremen Reverend Mother and sort of preparing to get the transition taken
It's
care
the
of.
ceremony scene.
Yeah, and Paul walks in with the two boys as his guards, and it's like, all right, that's pretty good. You solved that
They're
right
taking
away.
themselves so seriously as well. Like it even
Yeah.
says like they're taking their job seriously as the guard of him. It's like, okay.
Yeah,
The kids, but okay.
So this whole chapter is basically the Reverend Mother Ramallo is too old and she can't make the journey. So she's going to transfer
she's going to promote
position.
Jessica is going to go. Yeah, Jessica is going to go through the Reverend Mother ceremony.
Right.
That
way she can go to the next place.
Yeah, in an unusual twist, it's not a case of one Reverend Mother escorting another. It's a case of one Reverend Mother escorting another through the ceremony, and also at the same time, like you said, giving her literally her life. Because I'm assuming from the Bene Gesserit side, I'm assuming normally this takes place with just the sharing of consciousness, which we'll get into. Whereas this is a completely different point where it's the sharing and probably absorption of that consciousness at the same time.
And Chani gets a promotion here as well. That way,
she's now a Sayadina.
Right. In case Jessica dies, they have a Sayadina anyway. So Jessica drinks the water of life, which she thinks this is probably poison, and Chani just squishes it into her mouth, and she's like, "Yep, poison. We got it."
A little death is worse than death.
Right. And then
now we get to the sci-fi part of this book.
There's a lot of this where Jessica's like a floating moat floating through time, where she sees the molecular structure of the poison that she just ingested, and then using her powers, she's changing the structure of it, and then feeding
it into a drug rather than the catalyst, I believe is what they call it.
Yes, the catalyst. And then she like feeds the catalyst back to purify the sac that has the water of life in it. There's a lot.
And then everybody gets high from that.
Yeah, everybody gets high, and they all kind of like, as the chapter goes on, they all get her powers.
I can kind of sum this up in 2 modern day words.
Great.
Jessica essentially, with the exception of the molecular transformation and stuff like that, but the more important overview of this whole thing is she now has access to genetic memories.
Yes.
She can remember everything from the Reverend Mother, like the one she's just absorbed, essentially, her life and every life before that, and also Jessica's life and every life before that. She has access to the entire history of memories, and in that way, at the same time, and it's a weird one, can also kind of summon their personalities to speak to, kind of thing.
Yeah, she can pull on their experiences at will.
And like speak to their consciousness, despite the fact that it's not their consciousness, it's the memory of their
genetic
consciousness.
Memory.
Yes, it's a very interesting concept to introduce this point in the book, to be like, oh, okay, that's what a Reverend Mother is. That's why the Reverend Mothers are so respected, is because they have not just their memories, but everybody else's memories. And at this point, did you make the connection that the Kwisatz Haderach is essentially a male Reverend Mother?
Yeah, because they're pretty much, especially when they're talking.
They reference the dark place that she.
Yeah, the dark place inside that you can't look at, which I originally thought was her daughter that she's pregnant with, which becomes like a major part of this book, because basically the Reverend Mother that's dying is like, oh no, bro, you're pregnant. You messed up, bro. What are you doing? Oh, this is real bad. Okay, I mean, you're gonna figure it out because I'm dying, but like, you messed up. Blah. I'm dead.
Yep.
Yeah. Um,
So essentially, Aaliyah goes through the Reverend Mother process from the
right.
get-go
As
too.
a fetus. Um, I so there's something here that I really like. I really like that Jessica now knows all of the Fremen culture and all of
The
that stuff.
history,
Right.
the it even mentions like a couple of planet names are mentioned here and there, but they were chased off several planets and
Right.
enslaved on several
Yeah, they didn't
planets.
start on Arrakis, which I thought was a cool touch. Um,
Yeah.
my favorite part of this book, though, and the thing that I think is the coolest, is the water of life is made from drowning a sandworm. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
is the coolest thing that you could come up with on a desert planet. It's like, yeah, we have a little one of these and we just drowned it. And it's like, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
brutal, but that's cool as hell. Good job.
Yep. And the
That's
fact
great.
that it's like it turns it into a poison, which then the Reverend Mother turns it into a drug, and
Right.
that drug is used as like a they call it an orgy, but I don't know exactly what that entails.
Yeah.
But it's basically a gathering of the CH and them all having they all have a minor talent for prescience, a minor
Yeah.
talent
So they're all kind of like
for
having a
shared
shared
consciousness.
connection. Yeah, shared consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
So
seemed
like
more
they
like what it was.
all yeah, and they all get super messed up from this thing and they all
Hmm.
bringing themselves together as a community. And like when it gets for the time to Paul to drink it, and then he drinks it, and he gets super messed up.
Hmm. Yeah, he has a real time travel moment of just like,
And like it, like credit to Chani here because she knows something bad is going on, so she takes him away from everybody else.
right. She's
But
trying to
then
like give him a
she,
cheeseburger and like have him lay down for a minute.
and like they end up having this moment where it's like they see each other in the future. She sees it, he sees it. They
Yeah.
both see what is it? Moments of peace
Between periods
between
of
long.
violence.
Yes, it's a
Yeah.
very good line.
Yep. Yeah. And then that's kind of how the chapter ends and how book 2 ends of just them sort of saying like, all right, we're going to be together. We're going to make this connection happen.
Yes.
Um so that starts book 3 in the beginning is an interesting passage from Princess Irulan saying that Count Fenring was really the only friend that the Emperor has because the Fenring was the only person that was going to tell the Emperor no. Like
Yes.
I can go over here and I can go kill this person. I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Wink.
She gives two examples. She's like one in the thing he did and one in the thing he refused to do. The
Right.
thing he did was to smooth over the whole Arrakis deal
Yeah, the whole like
with the
Harkonnen
Atreides.
Arrakis thing. Yeah.
And then the second thing was when he said no and refused to kill a man. Did you realize that that was going to be literally one of the end scenes?
No, I really didn't. It was a good little piece there of him laying the groundwork early. Um, this is a chapter. This is kind of
It's
a rough chapter.
yeah, really quick. The Baron is also is almost assassinated by a very young slave boy. I
Uh-huh.
hate that this
It's the
thing
worst,
happened.
man.
Who had a poison dagger embedded in his thigh,
Right.
of course.
The first place he was
Um,
going to touch, which
uh-huh.
and
Again,
it's this almost
go
interesting
ahead.
thing where Hawat told Fade Routha to place it there to try to assassinate Baron Harkonnen, but then
But then
Hawat
told the Baron.
told the Baron, "Hey man, this dude's trying to kill you. That's real weird, huh?" So
Uh-huh.
it's this kind of like back and forth, and Baron Harkonnen's like, "Hey man, look, if you're gonna try to be my heir, you gotta smarten up. Like,
Yeah.
let's get it
I
together.
have things to show you kind of
Yeah,
thing.
like please stop trying to kill me. I'm going to give this to you later anyways. If you kill me, you're one, not going to get it, two, not going to learn anything. Anyways, you got to go kill all these slave ladies. How does that sound?" And it's like, wait,
Yeah.
what?
And these two guards who are very clearly under your thing,
Because
and
he
this
didn't
other
like how
thing,
they
and this
carried
thing.
the dead slave out. I'm like, oh god,
Yes.
Harkonnen, you suck. Jesus Christ.
Uh-huh.
Um,
This is how we know it's a time skip, by the way, because the way this whole thing starts is it's the Baron talking to Nafud, who is his guard captain, who became his guard captain after the poisoning incident.
Yeah,
And the
right, right,
Baron
right.
says to him, "Well, how long have you been my captain now?" And Nafud is like, 2 years since
Mm-hmm.
like the whole Arrakis thing happened."
Right, right.
And he knows about Muad'Dib. He literally mentions to
He
Fade Routher
does.
about this new religious figure
Right, and they're all like,
called
Muad'Dib,
Muad'Dib.
whatever. He's just like a crazy
Like, let him
Fremen.
use their
Yeah,
religions. Who
let them have
cares?
their little religion. Yeah. Next chapter is basically Thufir threatening Baron Harkonnen, saying like, "Look, man,
Oh yeah.
you think
He
you're
explains.
you think you're
He
smart,
explains like, yes. He explains the like Leto's plan to the
right?
Baron.
Right.
He literally gives him everything that Leto was going to do
Mm-hmm.
to get the Fremen on side. Like
Right.
that's the whole thing. He's like, this is how you do it. This is what it is.
Yeah, this is all you
By the
need to do,
way,
man.
by the by, like Raban has reported like that he's lost like 7,000 people and killed at least like 400 Fremen, and the
Right.
Sardaukar were not much better than that. How
Right.
can you not put these pieces together like I have?
Well, and it's really interesting because Hawat is also like, look, man, you need. I'm gonna tell you, you need to stop asking questions about Seleucus Secundus because like you don't know what's going on there. And Baron Harkonnen is like, oh, I don't really know what's. And Hawat's like,
It's a
hey,
prison
man,
planet.
that's
Blah
where the
blah blah.
Sardaukar come from. Stupid. How come you haven't figured it out? And Baron Harkonnen's
Uh-huh.
like, no, that's no, wait a minute. It's just like, yeah, you're messing with the army. So like maybe shut
Yes.
up about it for like
And you've
2 minutes.
already said the Emperor is a jealous man in the
Right.
movie.
And then he says like, "Oh, don't worry, Hawat. I told the Emperor that he could turn Arrakis into another prison planet." And Hawat is like, "I'm sorry, you did what? Is this how stupid? Tell me exactly what you told him. That's the stupidest thing a human being has ever said. What is wrong with you?"
And the fact that he says, like, look, no wonder, like, they are all over Arrakis by now. Like, this
Right.
is 2 years ago. They have agents everywhere on Arrakis by now.
Right. Yeah, you don't think the
Just in
Emperor is
case
down
you
there?
try and
Come
do
on.
this.
Right. Like, and then at the end, like you said, the Hawat is like, I don't know about the Muad'Dib. It's certainly not Paul, though. Anyways, so like,
Yeah. And this is where they also put out the rule of, like, look, increase the rates on Raban every month,
Yep.
every year. Increase the spice rates. Demand more. Then when he fails, abandon him.
Wipe
That
your
will let
hands
you
of
put
it.
yourself on
Yep.
the situation. And then the Baron's like, I got someone else in mind for that. And it's like, oh, Fade Routher, that might work. That might actually very
Yeah.
much work.
Yeah. Next chapter here is basically a catch up with Paul. He has
It's his initiation.
Yeah, he has a son, Leto 2. He has a sister, Aaliyah. They are.
Do you know her full title?
Oh no, I don't remember.
Aaliyah of the Knife.
Yes, that's right. There's also another like less kind one about like Aaliyah, the super weird kid who isn't a kid.
Abomination is the other word.
Yeah. And there's a lot of confusion here at the beginning of like, did I send them into the south to keep them safe?
I love this.
Or
this,
are they
like,
out hunting? Did I
it's like
get
3 or 4
father's...
paragraphs.
Yeah.
Like explaining time confusion.
Right.
Where he's like, is it now? Is this now? Is this what happened? What happened previously?
Did I get the skull,
moment?
or did that happen in another timeline?
Or is it in the future? Like, is Chani here? Is she in the south?
Right.
And it's like, no, Chani's there. Chani's there because she has to perform her duties as a Sayadina.
Right. Well, and
witness.
And we get this really great scene of Paul being frustrated that Chani killed some Fremen guys who came to challenge him in combat. And he's like, look, if I can beat them in a fight and I'm not as strong as you are, you have nothing to worry about at this point. I'll just take care of it.
And like, she even says, like, look, if people find out that I beat them and they died, the challenges will at least quiet down for a while, because then they know they might be quote unquote embarrassed by losing to me.
Exactly.
And guess what? It happens.
Yep.
The challenges quiet down because all
Yep.
of a sudden people can't get past Chani.
Yeah. And like you said, this is his kind of final rite of passage. Like everybody really respects him. He's kind of the de facto leader here. He's eclipsing Stilgar
Him
for
and Stilgar are like, there's a power struggle going on here where
yeah, there's like a
Stilgar's the naive, but
right.
everybody thinks Paul should be. But the problem is Paul's not a proper Fremen because Paul hasn't passed the
Right.
test.
The super cool test of riding a sandworm, which I like the scene. I like how it plays out. I actually really like how he describes the like hooking in between the armor plates on the back, so the sandworm
The
doesn't want to go.
biological reason as to why it would
like
happen.
it doesn't want to go back under the sand because then it'll get it in between. So that's why it
It's
wants to
placed,
stay
yes.
on the sand.
And that's how you turn them, is by just shifting down slightly
Right.
and then opening that section, and then it'll slowly start to turn.
Yeah, it's very good, and I like that. Of course, when they put out the thumper and call the sandworm, it's the biggest one they have ever heard of or seen. It's like, of course,
Mhm.
why wouldn't it be?
Yeah,
Great.
great grandmother of a worm.
That's that's right. Next chapter is it's basically Jessica wondering how's Paul doing. He has his test with the sandworm. Aaliyah and
Yes.
Hara are there. And we're
It's a good sequence, like trying to integrate the Aaliyah situation. We talked about it earlier, is complicated because essentially she's a child who was born with genetic memory, which means she knows everything
for hundreds of years.
Yes, so like they mention it in this chapter, but like Hera's like, look, like she was a child and couldn't speak and was giggling at double entendres that grown-ups were making around her.
Right.
Like we know that something's different about her. We get it, kind of situation. How are we going to solve this problem? And also we get here that Hera has officially announced to Jessica that after the year is up, or this year is up, she will no longer be a part of Paul's family because she is going to marry Stilgar.
Right. And this is where we get the play of Jessica and Hara recognizing that Paul is really the leader of the Fremen at this point, but to make that proper, Stilgar has to call out Paul and say, hey, we need to challenge to see who's going to be the leader. Stilgar is going to die. And kind of nobody wants that to happen, but that's the nature of things, which will lead kind of into the future.
It is the way.
It is the way. That's right. So the next chapter here, Paul is riding the sandworm and kind of getting the feel for it. I really like. So there's he's happy that he succeeded, and the Stilgar says like, yeah, look, you did it, but like you did it kind of sloppy. Like there's your first way. You could have done things better, and I like.
It was drum sand right to your left. What would have happened if the worm would have turned? You would have had to.
And I think it shows Paul's growing up here, that he has this flash of frustration, embarrassment, and he puts it down. And he's like, you know what, Stilgar was right. I could have done better. My head could have been on straighter. I did mess that up. And I was like, all right, like we're seeing Paul kind of shed some of that childishness of being younger and sort of be a leader here.
He even mentions like when he's up there by himself before he loops it around and picks everybody else up, like he wanted to jump for joy, he wanted elation, he wanted to do this thing, and then he remembers warnings from Stilgar about kids who would do it and then unhook themselves and do backflips on the back of this giant literal monster.
That's right. So dumb. And then Stilgar is like, hey man, you can go anywhere. Where do you want to go? And he goes, I want to go south. I want to go in the deep desert. And so I was like, yeah, that's great. But like, where do you really want to go? He goes, no, I want to go.
Is that what you're doing? You want a meeting?
You want to go? You want to go?
You want to call for the elders?
A 10 thumper trip? You want to go do that for real?
Because it's a great thing because he technically has right of choice because this is his initiation ceremony and he was the first up. So he chooses the direction the worm goes. And Stilgar's like, look, this is a 10 thumper journey. Do you really want to head south? Even if I say we turn around the next thumper, essentially.
Right.
So you get to go a little bit south, and then I turn us right the hell around, and we go
Right.
straight back here
How
again.
much do you want to push this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the tension is real between them, but I also like the fact that like the book is very much explicitly showing Stilgar as someone who only knows the way that he has done it. And it's showing Paul as someone who's trying to figure a way around that. He doesn't want to have to do this because clearly he likes Stilgar. Arguably, he loves Stilgar as a potential second father figure on this planet.
And that kind of, it's an interesting play here too, because in a minute they see a smuggler aircraft. And we already know who it's going to be because they talked about it like 2 chapters ago. But Stilgar is kind of, so Paul says like, well, let's bait the smugglers with a bunch of spice and let's go get them. And then Stilgar says, Usul thinks Fremen. So he's sort of like, all right, maybe you're okay.
I do like that Stilgar keeps referring to him by his different names in different contexts.
Right.
He's like, look, Paul Muad'Dib, I don't know what your thoughts are. And then when he says that, he's like, Usul the Fremen is speaking.
That's right.
I like this.
You got the Fremen stuff. You know what. So the next chapter is, as expected, Gurney Halleck is alive, and he's leading a group of smugglers. There's a quick line earlier where Paul had seen Gurney in a group of smugglers and couldn't say anything because Paul can't be alive, like Muad'Dib can be alive. So they, of course, they work over these Fremen. They kill a couple. They blow up a bunch of their ships with a bunch of rockets, which is cool. And
the fact that they reference that Paul is giving them new weapons too.
Yeah.
Like, this is what he's talking about. Paul has knowledge of things that the Fremen wouldn't even have dreamed of. Right. He knows what rain is, for example.
You want to blow stuff up? I'm your man.
Yeah, let me get you these rockets. And we've also had references to, like, both Thufir and Gurney's chapters have had references to, like, them communicating with each other. So they both know they're still alive. But they're also talking about, like, yeah, suddenly the Fremen have become like these. They're not just like a nightmare who attack us, like, and do damage, like when we're in their lands. Now they're attacking us with tactics and methodology that they have never used before. So I don't know what's going on. Yeah. Something has changed, and it's making them much scarier.
And I like this scene of Gurney saying to Paul, like, yes, I will help you. I will do whatever we need, especially to defeat the Harkonnens. They use their hand signals again to say, like, hey, man, there's a bunch of new dudes here I don't trust, so keep an eye out. They escape
in the audiobook version of this, by the way. There's this really great thing where they don't have one dude doing all the voices. They have a bunch of different voices. And certain Harkonnen chapters have got the guy who voiced Darth Vader as Baron Harkonnen, which is chef's kiss. Great choice for that one. But they do this great thing in the audiobook version for this where when he talks about like Gurney, he like standing still and listening to the sand blow, they'll do like a little sand noise in the background of it just blowing. And then when they have the face off, they clearly recorded the guy who does Paul's voice with a mask on because he's talking through the mask.
Right.
And then Gurney's like, I know, why do I know that voice? That voice sounds familiar.
It's definitely
and when
not
he takes
me,
it
Paul.
off, it uncovers the voice and he starts talking like a regular Paul again. It's a really nice little touch.
That's nice. There's a storm approaching, so they go in a secret Fremen cave. It's like one of those things where it's like we open up a little piece of the rock. Like, whoa, there's a giant cave
It's
here.
not just a little piece because they literally drive the harvester in there.
Right. Right, so like all of them are sort of like, oh, the Fremen are for real, okay? Like you had this right next to us, okay? And
why do I get the impression that like Arrakis is just built of play sets, like kids' play sets, where it's like, look, it's a mountain, and then you split it open and it's a cave.
Right, it's the Ninja Turtle cave in there. Of course, the Sardaukar are disguised as smugglers, and they try to kill Paul.
A whiff of the Imperial about them is a good line in this section.
I do like that, and then like he looks at the knife and he's like, this is Imperial about them. The Sardaukar knife. Like, bro, what are you doing? So then he lets one of them go to say like, yeah, go tell us about the cool Fremen. Um,
Oh, he doesn't do that. Yeah, he keeps those three. He keeps as
mhm.
prisoners,
Oh, right.
right up until the very, very end.
Yeah. And then at the end of the chapter, um, Paul sends Chani south and says, like, hey, you need to get Jessica. We need to figure out how I can be leader and not kill Stilgar. And
Yeah,
then,
send Jessica and the rest of the leaders up here. Like, we need
right.
to have a meeting.
And
And
then,
Stilgar thinks it's for one thing. It's not.
right. And then Gurney is like, Jessica's still alive. Time to kill her. It's just like, wait, no. Oh,
Uh-huh.
my God. I thought we were done with this. Son of a. Um, the next chapter is largely this face-off between Paul and Stilgar about Paul is assuming control of the Fremen, but at the same time saying, I can
Oh,
lead this.
I am the Duke of Arrakis. Like, this
Right,
entire planet is where I rule. This
right,
is my fief. It was handed to my father, and when he died, it was handed to me. I
right,
am the ruler of this entire planet. I'm not the ruler of this siege. I'm not the
right.
ruler of you fighters. I'm not the ruler of the Fate Daikon, which is the death commandos, by the
Mm-hmm.
way.
Right,
I rule everything. And do
right.
you think when I'm sitting on the throne and the seat of power, I have time to
Mm-hmm.
come to this siege and to solve all of your trifling little issues?
Right.
That's what Stilgar is for.
Right. Why
Like,
would I kill Stilgar? There's this great line here says, he asks, do you smash a knife before a battle? And the
and then he
Fremen were
literally
like,
says,
oh,
I'm not being a metaphor here. This is not metaphorically. I'm asking you literally.
right,
Do you do this before a battle?
right,
Would you have me cut off my right hand? Is another great line.
right,
It's like, Stilgar is my right hand. And they
right.
go through this hybrid ceremony of like half Fremen, half Atreides house thing, where
Yeah,
they name Stilgar one of his knights essentially, and they follow
yeah.
like half of the traditions of one and then half of the traditions of the other.
It's a
To
pretty good
even says,
scene.
yeah, and the fact that he says like to everybody, he's like, when Stilgar tells you something, it's from my mouth.
Right.
When Stilgar says to do something, it is from my mouth. You do
Yep.
what he says as if I said it to you myself. That's
Yeah.
how important he is to me.
Yeah, and the Fremen of like are rabbling the entire time, and at the end is sort of like, okay, fine, like that was the way you should have killed Stilgar, but now I get it. Like,
Ways change.
right, like now I see why you wanted to change here, and okay, fine, you're the leader, and Stilgar can stay. All right, all right.
Yeah, because they even mention like someone shouts out like it is the way, and he's like, okay, the way is also to take stragglers in the desert for their water. Yet
Right.
Stilgar didn't do that to two people
He
3
saved
years
me
ago.
and my mother, which is like, I think that was the moment where the Fremen were like, oh, things
Uh-huh.
can be, yeah, okay, yeah.
And this is the bit where we get the "Long live the fighters" chant,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
which I'm sure that won't be important at all.
No, probably not. It'll be fine. Um, we also get Gurney attacking Jessica here, saying like, "Are you traitorous witch? You killed Duke Leto, and you betrayed." And like, I like that Paul is like, "Bro, just
Enough. I'm
that was so
tired.
long ago, and like, it didn't. That was Dr. Yui, like." And then like, I like that Gurney is like, "It couldn't be Dr. Yui. He had the Imperial." Brainwashing thing, and Paul's just like, oh my god, it doesn't matter, it was just
Look, I
shut up.
have the proof. I can't show it to
Right,
you now because it's way far south,
right,
but I have the proof.
right. um I
And I like the fact that this sequence is fine. I think it's a pretty good like re-establishing of the relationship between Gurney and Jessica. I
mhm.
like the fact that Gurney is embarrassed by it. I love the fact that Paul's inability to see this because he's basically getting spice tolerance.
Yes,
Is what scares him into doing what he does next.
right. I did clip a set of really good quotes from this chapter though, because the next thing that happens is Gurney is like, man, I really messed up. Okay, Paul, time to kill me. And Paul's like, no, man. He says, quote, how many kinds of an idiot do you think I am? Must I go through this with every man I need? End quote. Like, he's like, I just dealt with this with Stilgar. I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
Like, I need you people alive to help me. And then he turns and
Uh-huh.
says, well, Jessica, you can kill me then. And she says, quote, Gurney, why do you insist the Atreides must kill those they love? End quote. It's just like,
Yeah.
stop being so dumb and just help us kill the Harkonnens. That's who we should be fighting. Shut up.
Uh-huh. I like the fact that Paul also references the different kinds of friendship, like how
Yeah.
Leto's friendship was love, and he never made a mistake. With everybody he loved, he never made a mistake who he called a friend in that way.
Right.
Whereas the Harkonnens version of friendship is not love, it's we hate somebody else. So
Right.
we're going to be friends because we hate this other person.
Yeah,
which
we are
is
united against the Force.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened with the Baron and the Emperor.
Right.
They hated somebody else, so they became friends for a little
That's
while.
right. That's right. Yeah, we talked about. Oh, and then Paul has the great idea. Wait a minute. I'm going to drown my own sandworm. Maybe drink a little bit of that water of life. He says, we'll see now whether I'm the Kwisatz Haderach who can survive
Kwisatz Haderach.
that one. Who can survive the test the Reverend Mothers have survived. And it's like, this is going to go great. I'm sure. I'm sure nothing has
Wrong
gone
with that at
wrong.
all.
The next chapter starts with Chani being summoned back south to visit Paul, and Jessica won't tell her why. And
North, but yes.
Oh, so, yeah, from the south. Sorry. So I love this scene of just like Chani coming back and be like, "Hey, man, what's up?" And Jessica's like, "Hey, how was the food? How's the trip? You catch that game last night on the TV?"
It's like literally you get told you need to go back home to see your family. They don't tell you why.
Yep.
And then when you land, that you have the most awkward conversation. Like, I just called off from work for 2 weeks.
Right.
I just paid $2,000 for a flight. Why are you calling me here?
That's right. And
Don't
they're like,
ask me about the weather.
Do they still give food on airplane flights? And you're like, bro, what? What do you need? And she goes, there's like, he's been unconscious for like 3 weeks and he looks like he's dead. I'm 100% sure he's still alive, but like only a little bit, and we don't know what happened. So to help, please, maybe. And then Chani figures out, oh, this dummy.
This is great as well because like it's the desperation.
Yeah,
like, you can. Chani's desperate to know what is going on. Jessica's desperate for a solution. She even says she doesn't know what made her summon Chani. She just did. But they're both in different forms of desperation about the situation. I like when they go and investigate Paul's quote-unquote body, and Jessica is like perturbed by how Chani is ordering her around. It's like, no, don't do that. Look, don't react that way. This is someone who cares about Paul doing this because they think it might be the right path. Like, she has to talk herself down from being like, oi, why are you talking to me like that?
That's right. So she like gives him one drop of the water of life, and that brings him back to life. And he's like, hey man, I just defeated a boss, and I unlocked a brand new power. I can see everything that's happening right now, like the guild ships in space around Arrakis. So
like the Emperor who has landed on Arrakis.
Right. Yeah, the Emperor who's also here. This all seems pretty bad. Also, Baron Harkonnen is here with a lot of other people, and he then throws down the line of saying like, well, if the guild navigators rely so much on the spice to do their thing, and they made that choice knowing that there were other alternatives,
they followed the safe path. Is interesting phrasing coming from a Fremen, which is what Paul is at this point.
Right. He's saying, maybe I just destroy the spice. Quote, he who can destroy a thing has the real control of it. End quote. Which is a line that will come up a bunch more. But just saying, like...
It's something that... It goes back to the beginning of the book, too, because it's like... It's mentioned, like, the Bene Gesserit don't mess with the guild. None of that great houses, they don't mess with the guild. Because the guild is what makes interstellar travel possible.
Right.
Like, they are the reason that you can go from planet to planet. So nobody messes with them. And then Paul's like, what if I mess with the guild?
What if I take away the only thing that makes the navigators navigate? How does that sound? The next chapter here is Paul, Stilgar, Gurney, and the Fremen are looking at Arrakeen from a distance and saying, all right, this is our time to attack.
It's the moment.
Yeah, like this, the mother of all storms is coming in. The Emperor and all of his forces are here. The Guild is here too. The Beast
Great
Raban is
houses are in space.
right. The Beast Raban is like completely on the outs at the moment and does almost no resources left that he's able to get. This is our time to attack the shield wall, blast a hole in it with atomics, which is
Uh-huh.
fun. Um, and
I
then
like that. I like the fact that they mention atomics here and there.
mhm,
But I specifically like the fact that every grey house has basically got a nuclear arms deal with
right,
themselves. And their agreement with all the other great houses to avoid total annihilation is that you cannot use them on humans. Key
right.
on
Paul is
humans.
just like, hey man, I follow the letter of the law. What did you want me to do? So he basically like bombs the shield wall to open up stuff and has the Fremen shoot the noses off of all of the
The
ships
ship,
that
so they
are
can't take
around.
off.
Yeah, and the Fremen.
Because
Hmm,
the great grandmother of a storm that we have coming in has got
right.
such an electrical charge that it shorts out every single shield.
Yep. Which I think is like such a great twist of like the Fremen know how to deal with not having shields because it drives the sandworms crazy. We're going to use that to our advantage when this like EMP storm blows through.
Uh-huh.
Uh the bummer of stuff like the attack is going super well, everything's going great. Also, the Siege Taber got attacked. Aaliyah got
Yes.
taken hostage. Leto 2 got killed. And
Which, for
this
those of
is
you who don't remember, that's Paul's son got killed.
right. And this is where
Paul and
Paul,
Chani, I should say. I don't
yes,
want to
yeah.
diminish Chani in this situation.
This is where Paul is like, man, like everything I touch is bringing misery, sort of
Uh-huh.
spreading across the universe. And he says how little the universe knows about the nature of real cruelty. And it's like, oh
Uh-huh.
no, oh, oh
This is
no,
the
Paul.
thing I was talking about in the part one of this episode, I believe, where people don't like, if you can see the future and if you can see every future, you can see futures where you yourself have done horrendous things,
Mm-hmm.
where you have been a genuine monster of a being,
Right,
and you know what that will do because you have lived it. You have the
right,
memory of that in your head. And
right.
this is what he references. He's like, the universe doesn't know what cruelty is because I know what cruelty is.
Right. And
I have
I
burned
haven't
families
shown
and
you my
children at the
cruelty.
stake.
Right, like yeah. The next chapter here is when the Baron Harkonnen meets with the Emperor.
The Baron's dressed down by the Emperor, yeah.
Oh, it's so good. And the Emperor is just like, you are the dumbest human in the
It makes the
entire universe.
it makes the Baron seem like such an idiot and such a
Right,
nobody in
right.
comparison.
And he has like the the Reverend Mother, the one that gave the Gom Jabbar originally.
Gaius Hallam Mohayim.
Thank you.
How I
She
remember
is
that, I don't know.
it's a real good name, that's why. She is whispering in the Emperor's ear of just like hee, like the Mean Girls sort of way, like look at how long he is, he's stupid. Look at his dumb outfit. This is great. And the Emperor is like, you know what? Yeah, he is stupid. He's
Uh-huh.
long for some reason.
But
Stupid guy.
the Emperor also thinks that the Baron was working with Leto.
Right.
He also
He thinks they
thinks
were in
that,
cahoots.
yes, and like him referencing, yeah, I sent a troop transport full of Sardaukar
Mm-hmm.
way south. They attacked this siege. They got like two hostages. One of them is this girl
Mm-hmm.
who, by her own admission, says she came along because she didn't want to be around when Paul arrived and found out the bad news.
Yeah, she didn't want to tell
And
Paul that his son died.
yeah, and they escaped only because of the jets on the troop transport scared the Fremen away.
Right.
And it was a CH protected by women and children, and the
And the
Sardaukar
elderly.
barely got out alive.
Right.
Yes.
And at this point the Emperor asks Baron, he's like, "Do you know who Muad'Dib is?" Like this seems to be the linchpin here. And even Harkonnen is just like, no, he's like some religious idiot. Like, how am I supposed to know? And Emperor's like, well, let me bring out this lady. And he brings out Aaliyah. And I love that even Aaliyah even discomforts the Baron Harkonnen. And he says, like, ew, what is with this tiny child, this tiny adult child? I don't, no thank you.
Yes.
And then the Reverend Mother loses
Freaks
her
out.
mind and it's just like, hi, I need to kill you. I need to kill anything. Jessica's probably around. Got to kill her too. Like, you got to destroy this entire planet. This is a thing that should not be. And the Emperor's like, shut up. It's a kid.
Yeah, the Emperor's like, oh, are you telepathic? Is that what the situation is? And keeps running on this telepathic thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Ilya's like, you didn't hear me the first or the second time I said this. No, I'm not telepathic.
Yeah, she's
but
like,
I know I
yawn.
can guess your intentions.
Right.
Because she's very clever.
Right. And I like that he's just like, oh yeah, I'm like Jessica and the late Duke Leto's kid. Like, whatever. It doesn't really matter, does it? Oh, and also, Muad'Dib is Paul Atreides. And he's my brother.
Yeah.
Is that important? And it is, because I know it is.
Who knows?
Yeah.
And then, like, I like the fact that the Emperor orders her killed right as the storm hits, right as stuff starts popping off, and Ilya is just like, hee, through a hole into the desert.
Yep. And she says, my brother comes, and then just, like, runs away and escapes. It's just like, peace, pew. And also Aaliyah kills the Baron Harkonnen before she leaves.
With the gum jar.
And says you've met the Atreides Gom Jabbar, and then just like, ha ha ha, bye. That was really good, where it's like, you can't, this gross dude just cannot live to the end of this book. Nope, he's dead. Great, fantastic, thank you.
Yep, fantastic. Bye.
And there's this interesting thing earlier on in the book where Paul tells Gurney that he can't see certain things about the Fremen, and like someone rides a sandworm next to them, and he's like, okay, you weren't supposed to see that. That was one of
the things you're not supposed to see. Yes.
And then, like, leading into this battle with the Emperor is a bunch of Fremen riding sandworms, and the Emperor's like,
through the shield wall that they destroyed.
Right.
That's why they destroyed it.
He's like, oh, that's probably not great. And
they even describe it as like a nightmare through the mist, because the ship gets a hole in it, full of sand, and past through the sand, all you can see is Fremen riding sandworms towards the city. It's like, hold on a minute.
And like,
what?
The Sardaukar are fighting, but they are definitely going to lose. And then the Emperor is like, okay, cool. So Reverend Mother needs to come with me. Someone get Count Fenring. We're going to go do some treachery. How does that sound?
Yep.
And then the last chapter of the book here, which I'm reading on the Kindle app, and the book was like 20 minutes remaining in this chapter. And I was like, oh boy, okay. I gotta tuck in.
It's a big boy chapter.
Tuck in for this bad boy. But so the majority of this chapter is Paul goes to the Arakean governor's mansion and kind of retakes it from the Beast Raban. Also find out he's dead somehow. I don't even remember how. And then everybody is sort of like, hey, Paul, like, are you okay? Like, you don't seem to be that upset about your kid dying. And there's a lot of people that just died during this battle. You don't seem upset.
He's doing that whole disassociation thing, which we last saw when he was explaining to Jessica that his dad is dead.
Right.
Like, he does that thing where, and I think it's part of being a mentat, where he just clicks off and clicks into the computational side of his brain. And it references it several times in the book. I don't think it does a good job by not going back and addressing it. But he's like, I'll have time for grief later, is how he describes it. Right. I think you need those scenes of him grieving later. I think you need those to
otherwise
humanize
he's too hard.
Him. Yes.
Yeah.
And everybody even says, like, yeah, you're not your dad's kid. You're your granddad's kid. That's who you are.
That's right. That was a cool dude, yeah. The Emperor approaches with all of his peeps. Paul then realizes that the guild agents are also able to see into the future because of some of the side effects of
That's
the
how
spice.
They negotiate through space, yes.
Right. So he's sort of figuring out that, and this is where he talks about, like, it says, quote,
all everyone could see is a black brick wall. There's nothing.
And he says the clearest safe course that leads ever downward into stagnation. And he's saying like, oh, now I'm the person that controls the spice.
Mm-hmm.
You guys really need me now that I'm in the position of ruling this entire planet, the one planet in the galaxy that has the spice. Now I see I
Yep.
have a little bit of political leverage here.
Yeah, and he puts the guild in their place like real quick.
He's like,
Like he
snap,
has
snap, snap. You guys need to go make a call over here. Go figure it
yeah,
out. And
get
they're
those
like,
ships out of the space, out of the area, and they're like, no, 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 go. There's chat and negotiations to take place. He's like, no, 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 no. There is no
no,
chat. No
I'm going to destroy the
no
spice.
negotiations. You do what I say because all you see, all I see, all everyone flying those ships up there sees is a wall of nothingness,
Right.
which is what I have set my mind to based on the outcome of this day. Now,
Right.
maybe in a day they'll see something other than a wall of nothingness, but right now all they see is nothing.
Right.
It's the end of the space.
Right. Paul sort of notes like, okay, this dude's the Emperor, this is the Princess Irulan, this is Feyd-Rautha, this is Count Fenring. He's freaked out because he can't see Count Fenring at
He's
all
never
in any
seen
of his visions,
Fenring.
which is interesting later because he's like a failed eugenics thing. Like,
It's super interesting in 4 books as well, because
okay.
minor spoiler, you'll get there eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But people with prescience can't see people with prescience.
Right.
So the guild navigators can't see Paul, but they can see the effects of what Paul does.
Sure.
And Paul can't see the guild navigators, but he can see their effects. So I don't know, if a guild navigator was involved in a treasonous plot, for example, it would protect everybody in that circle
right.
from being seen by Paul.
Right. So there's a quick scene here of Paul saying like, "Hey, what? My buddy, what's going on? Thurfir, come on over."
This is a sad scene.
Yeah.
Genuinely is sad.
And Paul's like,
I don't think the movie is going to do this justice because you don't
No.
get enough Thufir.
yeah, because
I would
Paul's
be
basically
surprised if
like,
he's in the second book, the second
he's
movie.
like, "Hey, bro, you're coming here to kill me," and he's like, "Yep, totally here to kill you. Everybody, look at this needle. I was gonna kill him with this needle."
He says to him like, "Look, if you need my life, it is yours.
Yeah.
Like, this is what you do." And I like the fact that Thufir phrases it as like, "Y'all know I gave my life servicing the Atreides.
Right.
Why do you think I would do less now?"
Right. Then give my life, and then he's like, "Bleh, I'm dead," which is just a super bummer. He then like swings his focus to the Reverend Mother and is just like, "Hey,
oh yeah,
hey, lady,
this is a good scene.
I'm the dude. You
It has been a long time since Caladan, correct?"
That's such a good just like middle finger line of like, "What do you think I can do this now?" And you probably had you played things a little bit better, I probably would have been a pretty good weapon for you, but I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm not going to kill you because you're going to die knowing that you can't control me.
And he spills all the Bene Gesserit secrets too. He's like, "You have waited 90 generations for this."
Right.
90 generations, which nobody knows what the Bene Gesserit plan is except for Bene Gesserit. So he's telling this in front of a room full of people.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fact that he uses the voice on her and the way it's described in the book, it's almost like a shockwave of power hitting her.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, no, you don't get to. You try using the voice on me now. Particularly, I could kill you with a word, which, of course, plays into the Fremen whole religious allegory part of this, because that's part of the prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's building his legend still evermore.
Right. He then talks to the Emperor and is like, "Hey, man, I'm going to marry your kid, the princess, and I'm going to be Emperor. So deal with that.
You will have a throne on
That's
your
right.
precious Seleucus Secundus, which I will turn into a garden planet."
And I was just like, oh, you just like threw a lot of middle fingers in this dude's way all at once.
To everybody. Like this entire
Right.
this scene is full of all of the quote unquote existing power structure of the universe,
Right.
and he just walks in and middle fingers
He's
everybody.
like, and you, and this guy over here. Next one's Fade Routha, and he's like, hey man, what's up with you? Like, weird dude. Like, you're a Harkonnen for
Mhm.
sure, right? And he's like, what? No, yeah, I'm a Harkonnen. And then,
Yeah, and I like the fact that he wants to feed him to Gurney because
yeah,
Gurney wants him. And then Fade Routher's solution to that is, oh, you said it was Can Lee. Now we got to do things Can Lee way.
right.
1-on-1, me v you.
And
Harkonnen v Atreides.
right, and Gurney's like, come on, bro. Like, you owe me. I need to kill this dude. Like, look at this dude. He's Harkonnen. This is my
I
job.
love this
Come on, man.
because Gurney's like, they're my sister, my years in the slaves pits. The Harkonnens took
Right.
so much from me, and I like the Paul's responses. Do you not know that they took a lot from me too? My father, Duncan, Thufir, my family, my legacy, my childhood,
Arrakis.
all of this is gone because of them. So
Right.
don't start with this who's
Did
been
you read
suffered
the
more
first
by
part of the
the
book, Gurney?
Harkonnens.
Yeah, like, so they have a fight here where
I like the before the fight begins.
mhm,
Fade Routher is running through his head of all of the spoils he's gonna get. It's like, I'm gonna get that princess, and I'm gonna get part of this
that's right.
throne,
Look at all this
and
cool
I'm gonna be
stuff in
great
this room.
because I am a Harkonnen trained from a child in the thousands of slave battles in the combat arena. What does
Right.
this wandering duke think he knows? And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
dude, you ain't met a Fremen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's this is kind of an interesting fight because there's a back and forth between Paul is wondering, oh, is this like metal loincloth he's wearing? Does it have a shield in it? Is there some sort of subterfuge going? Oh, I see a needle, and all of that, and it's a surprisingly close fight. Like, Fade Routha hits Paul, like scratches him once with a poison blade, and Paul is just like, "Oh, I'll just neutralize the poison, no big deal." Anyways,
Yeah.
back to the fight.
By the way, I'm a Reverend Mother. Let me just change that.
Right, like, oh, you have a soporific on your blade. Whoopity doo. Anyways, gonna kill
And
you.
it hits him with like the Chris knife, which is just naturally acidic. And then Fade
Right.
Routher does the soccer player thing of throwing himself on the floor and be like, "Oh, I've been poisoned." It's like,
Oh,
no,
ow.
dude.
Ooh. I also like that there's this little thing of Jessica sort of telling him like, "Hey, man, there's like, remember that secret word
That's
from
secret
earlier?
code.
There's one." Paul's like, "Shut up. I'm gonna fight this for real. Don't even worry."
Uh-huh.
And like Fade Routha kind of figuring that out before he dies of like, oh no, like that applied to me as well. That really
And the
sucks.
fact that Paul doesn't use it. It's
Right.
Paul literally saying, "I don't want to use it," which causes the problem that
Right.
causes Fade to like to stumble over his actions, and then
Yep.
causes Paul to be able to take advantage. Is the fact that he says he doesn't want to use the
That's
word.
right. I'm not gonna use the secret word. Whoops, you're dead. Um,
Uh-huh.
at this point, the Emperor is beside himself and says, "All right, Fenring, you got to go kill Paul. He's weakened. It's been a long day. It's been a long fight. Shouldn't be a big deal." Um, I like that Paul realized that Fenrig was almost the like,
Akquisition.
yeah, he's almost the like eugenics progeny.
He's like literally maybe 1 or 2 generations before Paul. That's how they knew they were close, I would assume.
Right, but
And like the shared brotherhood in the stair is a very nice little moment.
yeah, and then Fenring is like, "Nope, not gonna do that."
Slap.
If that's right, like that's not gonna happen. And at this point, the Emperor's like, "Okay, well, I guess I was beaten." And then Paul's like, "I guess you were also. I'm going to terraform this planet. It's going to be beautiful and green and water and oases. And we're going to leave a little bit of the desert because there needs to be a little bit of difficulty to make
There'll
people
always
hard."
be spice.
Yeah, and there will always be just a little bit of spice.
So this is also the point in the book where basically Paul kind of accepts that there's nothing he could do to stop the jihad. It is
right.
coming.
It's an
It is
inevitability.
here. If you wanted to stop it, you should have died a long time ago. They
Yep.
even mentioned like in the fight with Jamis, like the only way to stop the jihad at that point would be the death of them and everybody who saw that day.
Yep.
In the audiobook version, they do this really cool thing of you hear like marching feet in the background as he's like the
That's
Command and
clever.
Conquer marching feet
Right.
as he's having this thought to himself, where it's like,
Right.
yeah, it's coming. Something is
Um,
going to happen, and it is coming.
yeah, and then this is basically he and Chani are talking like, look, I'm gonna marry Princess
Shani
Irulan.
tries to like throw herself away. She's trying to do this thing of like, look,
I'll
nothing's
just leave.
tying me to you.
Yeah, like
I'm just
if
gonna
I'm
go.
bothering you, I'll just leave. And he's like, no, I'm marrying Irulan to be the emperor. Well, I'm not gonna have any kids with her. Like, I'm not even really gonna look at
Mhm.
her. Like, she can be in a
She will
library or
know
whatever.
nothing of affection from me.
That's
She
right.
she she likes her history. Well, I hope she really likes her history because
Mm-hmm.
that's all she's gonna get. And I like that because it's a throwback to every opening chapter of the
That's
book.
right. Yep. She's
Where
got
it's like,
plenty of
oh,
time to write all this
she
stuff down.
literally only had history.
Yep.
All that she had was
Yeah,
the
and then
history.
he says, "You and me, Chani, we're gonna have more kids." And then Jessica says, "We who carry the name of concubine, history will call us wives." And that's the end of the book.
Mhm.
So, I my it's not even criticism. My impressions of this book that I said at the
Because this is
beginning
one
of
of the
this
few
section.
times.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the few times that we will have communication backwards and forwards about something. You were like, "Oh,
Right.
I finished Dune and I have some thoughts." It's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
And there's a worm emoji, but that's about it. Um,
yes."
like I said earlier, high highs and confusing lows. Um, I I like a lot of the stuff. I like the time skip. I like seeing Paul.
What was the lows for you, by the way?
The water of life and kind of like the ending
Mhm.
of book 2 where it's all of this like chemical transmutation sort of stuff. I don't mind the genetic memories and that stuff. I thought that stuff was okay. But a lot of like the water of life kind of chemical
Being able to
transmutation.
literally metaphysically alter the universe around
Right.
you,
It's
kind of
sort of
thing.
like that's maybe like a step further than I really wanted, but um it's interesting because I think it's hard to see Paul as the hero at the end of this book.
100%. Thank you. He is not a hero.
He's like not he claims to be beholden to the flow of time and the jihad is inevitable.
And the genetic race memory or the genetic race
Right.
desires.
But he's not doing much to not make that happen, and then like gleefully throwing the middle finger to nearly everybody around him and doing what seems to be the right thing of like transforming Arrakis. And but he could end the spice production and probably leave the universe in a much better spot, but he's kind of not driving it in the right direction, and he's hardening himself and hardening his heart too much, and we don't see
Yes.
the other side. Like you said, we don't see the other side of it where it's like, here's Paul Atreides the human. We're
You don't see
seeing
the soft side, yeah.
right, we're seeing Muad'Dib,
The
the
the only
Fremen
part we
religious leader.
the only part we get of that is one of like Chani's perspectives. I think it's the one where she's trying to revive him from the water of life, and she's like, "Look, I mean, I know this is Muad'Dib, I know all of the legends,
Mm-hmm.
but I see a different Paul. I see Usul. I see
Right.
the one who shares intimate nights with me,
Right.
the
I
one
see this
who we look
father.
after our kid."
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting. I'm glad I read this book, and I'm glad we're watching the movies.
I'm sending you a hilarious meme, by the way, which is a
Okay.
minor spoiler if they ever get to a sequel. So one of the things that we're talking about here is the thing that you've glommed onto. Is please read that. Look at and read that
Okay.
meme. By the way,
I will look at this while we're
um,
talking.
yes, because I find it hilarious.
This image says by age 30 you should have a wife, a concubine, an abomination of a sister, and a 61 billion kill count and a coffee service.
Uh-huh. So that's his kill count, by the way.
Right.
The jihad happens. They go on to kill 61 billion people
Yeah.
across many different planets. You have Fremen who drown to death on other planets because they don't know what drowning is.
Mm.
The thing that a lot of people took away from this book was, oh, Paul's a hero. Apparently, obviously, I'm not going to talk for him because number one, his worldviews and mine do not align. But Frank Herbert was not happy with the fact that people thought he was a hero. It was
Right.
meant to
Frank
be
Herbert's
a
like,
talk.
wait, for
It
that
was a
Paul?
it was a dressing down of imperialism, but also at the
Right.
same time promoting eugenics and everything else that's going on in this
Right.
book is nightmarish. So Dune Messiah, which is the second book, is wafer thin in
Mhm.
comparison to Dune, because that's basically an addendum to this book. It's like, hey, this is what happened. Get your head straight. He's not a hero.
Right. A jihad is not a good thing across the
Uh-huh.
galaxy. Like, yeah, it's I am glad that we're going through and doing this season. I'm glad that I read it. This is such a foundational work in science fiction, and
Uh-huh.
I can definitely see why. And I'm glad I got over the hump because there are parts in this book that are tough. I think if you treat the first couple of chapters uh just like go with the ride, like you'll probably
It's
do really well.
We also talked about it in the movie. Watch the
Mhm.
movie, then read the book. That might
Yeah.
help bring you in that much
It's like
easier.
the one time the opposite is probably good, where it's like just watch the movie and then like fill in all the gaps with the book.
Uh-huh.
um but yeah, it's I liked this book largely overall. I'm finishing this book, I was like, boy, the number of people that are thinking that Paul's a hero are probably the bunch of people watching Star Wars and being like, those stormtroopers, pretty cool. I want to be one of those. And it's like,
Uh-huh.
no, bro, that's the
100%.
Nazis, bro. What are you
Yes.
doing? Like,
Uh-huh.
come on.
Yep.
So that's a bit of a bummer. I
Can you
was
see the touches in the, like we talked about at the very, very start of this season, how like
mhm,
Dune has influenced modern society in such a way that people don't even realize they're referencing Dune when they make certain references.
mhm,
And like seeing the fingertips of it through, for example, Star Wars, through
right,
all of the other fiction that you've seen and read and
right.
everything else in
Most
between.
science fiction that is going on, like,
Yes.
yeah,
It's
you
like
get you
everything has three bases. It's like Asimov, Frank Herbert, and the other guy who I don't remember the
right.
name of.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how foundational this work is. You know, we usually don't read a lot of stuff that is foundational. We're reading the stuff that's been influenced by it, and it's interesting to see how much of this is really so important to a genre that I do really love. I do really love sci-fi stuff, and it's interesting to see how much of this is so important to the genre overall. I'm also seeing a lot of people. We are recording this before the release of the second Dune movie, um,
Yes.
and there is a proliferation of AI art that has suddenly morphed into being able to feed. I'm only describing this just in case hopefully this stuff disappears soon. Using AI prompts to animate movies, and the number of people that are referencing like we need to stop computers that think, and all the Dune references of like
Oh,
this is the
100%.
moment where you take all the computers out in the backyard and you shoot them. So
Yeah.
it's this interesting kind of combination of 1965 Frank Herbert's nightmares and 2024's actual current nightmares.
Yep.
Yeah,
One might say there might be some butlers down the road for us as a
right.
society.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm glad we read this. I enjoyed the vast majority of it. The stuff it's not that I didn't enjoy the rest of it. A lot of it was sort of like, okay,
And
yeah, let's see where we're going. It's a
again,
little confusing.
it also has its problems in like the
100%.
whole women of, despite the fact that the Bene Gesserit are a sisterhood keyword there that
Right.
exists and is arguably one of the ruling powers in this universe. The fact that the majority of women in this book are relegated to mothers, like they are not their own people, kind of
The
thing.
choice is wife or slave. Like it's
Yeah,
not great.
It's not great, but like again, at the same time, they reference Aaliyah being just as able as any other Fremen child.
Right.
They also reference how good Jessica is. Like they do a lot with a little, but at the same time, there's also those old stereotypes in there. The downright cultural appropriation of Eastern, from our perspective, Eastern religions of Buddhism and Muslim societies,
Right.
and I get it. Like that's kind of where he took the inspiration from. The white savior complex is
Oh
right
yeah.
here, and
Yep.
all of its full like in all in all of its glory is right here. And he's not even just a white savior for the brown people. He's a white
Right.
savior for every people, which is
Right.
just a
For
little
the
bit
entire
sure.
universe. Yeah.
Yeah. Like again, it has its problems, but I think one of the things that makes this special to me is the world it builds is so intense.
Yeah.
Like it's so big. Like my main books when it comes to the Dune books, if I'm going to do a reread, I'm going to do Dune, Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, and God Emperor of Dune.
Is that the
Those
first
books
four?
take yes, that's the
Okay.
first four. I don't like going past that into like Chapter House and all of the rest of them because I don't like the fact it bothers me that the story ends with Frank Herbert's death and a huge tease about what is coming next. Like there
Sure.
is a threat approaching. This is how the threat is described. That's it. He's dead. No more books.
Sure.
It's the Wheel of Time problem, one might say,
Right.
where you build it to a certain point, but then you're done by the time it's finished.
Right. And at least Wheel of Time got a fairly well liked and well written author to finish in Brandon Sanderson. And then everything I hear about the last couple Dune books is basically like, yo, his kid
It's
wrote his own stuff. What is happening
dude.
here?
Yeah. So it was claimed that they were written from notes.
Right, like
Claimed being
notes
the key word.
before he passed. Right.
Yes, and a lot of these the problem is if he did one or two, it'd be like, okay, he's finishing the story. He's
Yeah.
finishing
We're
the
just
thing.
wrapping up all the loose ends and kind of just like Wheel of Time. I think there were 2 books after he passed, and it's like, look, I'm just wrapping up all the stuff he wrote and just putting a bow on it.
Get to the bottom of a story. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The problem is he also worked with Kevin J. Anderson. Brian is his son's name, who worked with Kevin J. Anderson, who's done a bunch of schlocky novels for science fiction forever. He's done Star Wars. He's done a bunch of them. If he did 2 more books, that would be fine.
Sure.
However, you've also got the Prelude to Dune series, which is House Atreides, Harkonnen, Carino, Legends of Dune, which is the Butlerian Jihad, the Machine Crusade, the Battle of Corran, Dune sequels, which is Hunters of Dune, Sandworms of Doom, Heroes of Doom, Paul of Dune, The Winds of Dune, Princes of Dune, Great Schools of Dune, the Sisterhood of Dune, the Mentats of Dune, Navigators of Dune, the Caladan trilogy. These are not notes. These are money-grabbing sequels.
You wrote 15 books out of like a notebook's worth of notes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because
feels...
in the version of the book I read, there's an afterword by Brian, his son, that was basically like, look, my dad was a real jerk. Like, he needed the house to be silent. He was angry that his books were failing. Nobody was picking him up. He was okay once it succeeded, but boy, he and my mom were thick as thieves, and that was it. Everyone else sort of sucked to him. So, yay, Dune!
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh.
He's a legitimate, like, for weird phrasing, he's a legitimate monster, Frank Herbert. Like,
right.
He had certain opinions. He was undoubtedly racist.
Yeah.
He had a lot of issues with a lot of different people, like, and definitely was not great as a human being.
Right.
But this is that whole thing that we talk about. It's the guy who wrote Night Watch for me. He is a supporter of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which, if you're curious, folks, and you heard me talking for a while, that's why I don't talk about that book series anymore.
Right.
Is because
we've washed our hands of it.
I'm not going to promote something that he is alive and promoting something different.
Right.
This I feel slightly different with because the dude is dead. Everybody knows he was a wrong un.
You can more
And
easily separate the art from the artist.
yes, and
Right.
it's the same problem we have with the Cthulhu guy, like a
Right.
well-known
Horribly
problematic
racist.
person.
Jesus. Yeah.
Like that, it's the same thing, but like at the same time, like he, at least in Frank's case, he built a world that I'm interested in, and maybe on my problematic part, the problem I have is I got into it as a kid. I listened to
Right.
this and got into this stuff before I was more widely aware of stuff.
Right.
So like this universe has always interested me, yet weirdly not interested me enough to go and buy the schlock that his son has put out, because everything I hear about it is nightmarish.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about, like, read the first 4, and then if you want to punish yourself, read about 30 other books that are not good.
Yeah, because I think there's like 7 in total. So God Emperor, Heretics, and Chapter House are the final 2
Right.
that Frank Herbert wrote.
Right.
Chapter House ends with the biggest tease of all time. One might say it's Twilight Book 4 level of tease. I don't know if you've read them. That should be interesting if we get
Yeah,
to that at some point.
probably.
But like I ended God Emperor because I think God Emperor, it's 6,000 years after this. Like
Okay.
that's the time frame that you're dealing with here.
Right.
And like the amount of story change between all 4 of them is very impressive.
All right, well, we're running out of time here. That is Dune, the novel. We could probably talk for about 17 more hours. Next episode
100%.
coming up will be the soon-to-be-released Dune Part 2 movie. And we will talk about it then. And we'll talk about kind of our thoughts about this book leading into the next movie here.
We're not going to do the 85 movie. We're not going to do that this season.
Yeah, that's another
be
season.
Shuffled to a different season.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there eventually. That's for future us. We can see the future, and that is in the future for us.
Yes, we have a spreadsheet after all.
That's right. That's our spice is Google Docs. All right. On that note, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Oh, he created podcasts to train the faithful.
That's right. That's right.